to the Prophecy Club. Let me ask you a question. If you were to see the president's representative come out behind the little blue podium and say these three things, what would you suppose the situation might be? One, that the United States, as you have known it, has ceased to exist. Two, all property lines are dissolved. And three, that the U.S. dollar is worthless. In my opinion, I think that is part of the statement. That is the surrender statement. After the Russians have attacked us, nuclear weapons have landed all up and down the east and west coast, the sky filled with airplanes going all across America, dropping atomic bombs at will. Obama runs to the red phone, but the Russians don't answer. He can't stop the bombing. The next day, they accept our surrender, and I believe that's part of the surrender speech. Now, if you want all of the information, you got to get the DVD that I highly recommend called I Saw the Dollar Dead by Daniel Davis. Now, Daniel is a missionary for Costa Rica, and he had this three-part dream. He was shown the death of the U.S. dollar, the global impact, all property lines being dissolved. He was shown how the one world government rises and its following currency and Agenda 21. He was told that communism is our greatest political enemy. Recommend you get it. You can get it for $30, but right now you can get the DVD for a gift of $15. But how'd you like to have it for a gift of just $8? Well, it's a part of a package. 6 speakers, 11 DVDs is called the October Prophecy Conference. Valued at $330. Normally we ask $200 gift, but right now you can get all 11 DVDs for just $90. That's about $8 a DVD. And if you want just a single DVD or maybe 2 or 3 DVDs, if it's part of this package, for right now up until May 9th, you can get them for just $15. Now, it's got to be a part of this package. But if you get all 11 DVDs for $90, you also get free shipping. That's before May 9th. Now, here's the list of the DVDs. Shane Warren, The Storm, Judgment, Revival. Bill Federer, Change to Change, Islamic Conquest Past and Present, 32 Miracles in American History, Origins of the Great Awakening. Bree Keaton, Go Save the Pygmies and Translations to Heaven. Maurice Sklar, Revelations for the Midnight Hour. Michael Boldea, 9 Dreams and Visions, The Suffering or the Glory. And the one we're about to listen to today, Daniel Davies, I Saw the Dollar Dead.
It moves forward and there's no way you can ever pay it off. There's not enough money created for you to ever pay your loan back. They are the originators. It's a Ponzi scheme, and the Ponzi scheme's about up. Every fiat currency has a 100-year cycle that was designated and planned in 1913 that 100 years later all hell will break loose as the final 5% value of the dollar plummets down, 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 and as it dies. A lot of Americans today are saying, because they don't understand history and the ancient boundary stones have been moved, they say, the dollar's never going to die. Listen, the dollar looks like an Enron chart. It's dead. It's fallen 96% from its beginning value, and you stand there and say it'll never die? We're living on fumes. All we got's 4% left. And so we have to understand that these are designated, they're designed to fail after 100 years. And here we come into 2013 on a 100-year plan. The dollar is supposed to go away because that is its design. If you want to know what happens in a country when the dollar dies, go to any other country that's lost its currency in the last 20 or 30 years and watch basically a one-year meltdown where the government moves into mass control and the people move into mass rioting. People get mad when you take their stuff. They've worked so hard to get. And if you want to see what's going to happen, look at history because it's repeated itself over and over. We've never lived through a dollar destruction. We've never lived through a currency exchange into something new. So we're about ready to walk into this, and we think it's the end of the world. But each of the other countries thought it was the end of the world too when it happened to them. Wasn't the end of the world. It was time for a new currency. And it just so happens today that all currencies are fiat, and they're all nations are in debt, and the World Bank has the capacity, if they choose to, this time around, they can devalue all world currencies and bring us into one new world currency. And we already know that the Federal Reserve didn't print $16 trillion. They put it in a computer and sent the digits out, and those banks became 16 trillion richer through a computer entry. That means that this next currency doesn't have to be printed on a printing press. It can become a digital way of life. Yeah, very, very. We are at that point right now. So it's important to understand the U.S. dollar, to me, right now, is worthless. If you looked at an investor who lived in 1913, he'd tell you it's worthless. He'd say every dollar I kept has lost 95% of its value. How do you learn how a dollar loses its value? The best way that I have learned to do this, and I want to share this with you today, is that there's a reason why a currency has a 100-year plan. It's because you and I typically are not going to make it to the end of that plan so that we can warn our kids about what happened. You know, if a currency had a 40-year plan, we could tell our kids and grandkids, listen, we were there when that thing melted down and all the trouble it caused. Don't you fall for it. So they crank it out just a little bit past our lifespan, so there's no generation that has a living person that says, don't let it happen to you. It's an amazing plan, and it's planned on human life and on human cyclical history. Now, how do I find out how much my dollar is worth? In 1913, and I wish I had some dollars here in front of me, but in 1913, a U.S. dollar was equal to a certain amount of silver or gold. As a matter of fact, if you have a 1-ounce gold coin from back in 1913, you'll see it says $20 on it. It was a $20 coin. So a 1-ounce gold coin was worth $20. Now, thank you. Oh, wow, the offering time. Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. And this will be good. And it used to say gold certificate, $20 gold certificate. So I could take my $20 gold certificate into the bank, and he'd go back to the bank. I could say, I want my gold. And I would hand him my gold certificate. He'd hand me my 1 ounce of gold. Well, as the dollar, when you entrust the printing of your money to evil men and you give absolute power, which will absolutely corrupt a person, then they will begin to print secretly more dollars than they have gold. And that's exactly what happened. We've been caught repeatedly printing more than we had to equal the gold, and we eventually had to take the dollar off the gold standard. And so it has progressed. We had gold notes, we had silver certificates, and now we have Federal Reserve notes. Now, the difference between a certificate and a note is, one is a certificate of gold or silver in the bank, the other one is a loan. So this is a Federal Reserve note. And so they say, okay, with this bill or this note, you've loaned us $1. So we bring it in, we'll pay you $1 for your dollar. Well, $1? How are you going to pay me $1 for my dollar? $1 of what? Good question. No need to bring it in. Just keep your dollar. It's worth $1. Well, how much is $1? Good question, because it's not backed on anything, right? So so how much does air cost? $1. Or how much does it cost to print this? Not much. Doesn't cost any more to print this than it does to print a crisp 100. Right? So we have been sold a Ponzi scheme, and the Ponzi scheme's almost at the end. I recommend that you get out of this Ponzi scheme to the best of your capacity as early as possible. Thank you for those. I'll give them back. So, no, those aren't yours. No. Oh, did you? Okay. All right. So here, look at this. The dollar currency represents property and boundary lines, doesn't it? Well, how much do you make an hour? Well, an hour is a property line. Right? Well, I worked an hour and I made this much money. Okay, we can draw a boundary around that. We know how much you're worth in an 8-hour day. We know how much you can afford, how much house you can afford, how much car, how much food can you afford, based on the property lines of that dollar and your 8 hours of work. We've got something to work with. We can mathematically calculate. But if these property lines have been dissolved, your dollar's gone. And so is your ability to determine how much per hour you're worth. Well, if the dollar's gone, how much per hour are you worth? Now, if the dollar's gone, we're still thinking in dollars. But you can't think in dollars if the dollar's dead. So we go back to the scenario, a $20 gold piece or a $20 bill. In 1913, either one, a $20 bill or a $20 gold piece, would buy you one of the nicest suits in town. Suit, tie, shirt, belt, nice pair of shoes, a night at the nicest hotel in town, and all the food and drinks you can handle that night. That's what a 1 ounce gold coin would do. And that's what a $20 bill would do. Speed forward 100 years. A 1 ounce gold coin today is worth what? Right now, $1,700, $1,800. Would that still buy you a nice suit, tie, nice shoes, nice belt, a night in a nice hotel, and all the food and drink you can handle, probably limousine for the night? Come on. But a $20 bill won't get you dinner at McDonald's for $4. You can't even buy the belt. And that's the slow decline, we call it inflation, that's built in. It's a secret tax that the World Bank enslaves people with to make you feel like you've got value, but they're secretly taking it, secretly fleecing the sheep. That's the what I call Pharaoh and his magicians and their dark secrets of banking. We've been hoodwinked and bamboozled. Didn't know it was coming. But we can rescue ourselves before this thing falls to zero and so many Americans and others around the world lose everything they've got. So the dollar currency represents value, cost, weight, measurements, lines of commerce and finance. If you've got to have money to value who you are. You see how much we've lost between the dollar or gold. Now, my son and I were heading to a coin show a couple of years ago, and I had some cash in my pocket. I was going to go buy some gold and silver. It was a Sunday morning, and my son said, we're about 8 o'clock, we're driving up to this coin show, and he said, "Dad, why did you drag me out of bed? It's Saturday, it's my day off." And I said, "You got to go up with me, son, you're going to learn. We're going to learn today." And he said, "I don't want to learn, it's Saturday, I need to sleep," young teenager. And so I pulled the money out of my pocket, and I just had this idea, so I started letting the money talk. And I said, "Danny, Mr. Daves is going to rescue us from the evil bankers. We've been losing our value. We're going down to nothing, and they're doing it on purpose, but he's going to lock in our value. He's going to trade us for silver and gold, and he's going to save us from the evil dark forces." And my son, of course, like, "Dad, only you would dream that." So I just let that money talk to him for a little bit and said, he's going up to lock in our value and to stop the bleeding. And that's the way I see it for gold and silver or any hard asset. When you take this dollar, which it's built in to die slowly and at the end to die quickly, then at some point we have to lock in our wealth. Lock in what you really honestly have. How much is a dollar worth? Well, right now, 1,800 of them will buy you an ounce of gold. Just a few years ago, 350 of them would buy you an ounce of gold. And in a few years in the future, we don't even know if this ever rolls down like Germany did in 1919 through 1923. Germany had marks. A 40,000 German mark account in 1919 was a retirement. You're retired and you're in good shape with 40,000 marks. 4 years later, an ounce of gold was something like 400 billion marks for 1 ounce of gold. A 40,000 mark account was retired as worthless because a postage stamp costed more than 40,000 marks. And so rather than paying the money that was in that account to let the people they now know that they now have zero, They just retired the accounts. So a retirement went to zero in 4 years through hyperinflation because they printed money and had nothing to back it. This is math. It's math. It's not rocket science. It's just pure math. And that's exactly what we're running into today. We have a warning from God to get us out before the train crashes. Thank God for that. So how much is your house worth? Well, when I do financial conferences, I ask 3 questions. In your area where you live, how much is your house worth? Or how much is the standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath house worth? Just think in your mind for a moment, how much is it worth? And you say, okay, well, I could probably buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for this amount, okay? Now, what about a nice new car that has, let's just say power windows, power locks, power steering, nice car, nothing real fancy, but how much would it cost you? Think about that for just a moment. In your country, in your state, city, how much would a car cost? And then let me ask you this. How much is a gallon of milk in your area right now? Think about that, how much that is. Now, there is one problem with all 3 of your answers, because in your mind you answered in dollars. We've been sold into a system that we are locked in a box that's very hard to get out of. The fact is, if you look at reality, gasoline and commodities are much cheaper today than they were 25 or 30 years ago. Does anyone remember 25-cent gasoline, 25 cents a gallon? A few people remember that. Did you know gasoline right now is about 10 cents a gallon, if you figure it in silver? Because a little silver mercury dime right now is worth $4. And you throw a silver mercury dime down, you got a gallon of gas. But that silver mercury dime, which used to be worth a dime, is now worth $4. And that paper that you're holding, now it takes 4 of those dollars in order to buy that same gallon of gas. So is gas going up? No. Your dollar's going down. So as you see your food rise here in the next year, your food is not rising. Your food is constant. Your dollar is dying. You have to understand that. It's hard to get out of that world because we've been trained our whole lives in the world of the dollar. And the Lord's teaching us how to step outside of this box to protect ourselves. Once you begin to see life outside of the box of the dollar, you're safe. So how much is your house worth? Now, don't answer in dollars. The good news is this. Your house is your house. You know what it's worth? It's worth a house, and that's worth a lot. If you've got a house, you got something. Yeah, but it's only worth this much. Don't worry about the dollars. It's going to be worth a whole lot more of those dollars when it takes a 500,000 of them to buy the shrubs in your front yard. Your house can be worth a whole lot of dollars, but the dollar isn't going to buy you anything. Now, in that day, you may have a $100,000 retirement account, but is it going to be retired worthless, or is that going to cost $100,000 for the Happy Meal down at McDonald's? Well, in Germany, that's what happened. They lost everything because they stayed with the currency that died. And I've been told, for myself, my education, and from the Lord, He's told me, I believe with all of my heart, get out of the dollar. Do not put your trust in that dollar. And we'll discuss that in a little bit here. How do I do this? We're going to talk about building an ark of safety to get through a real trying time that is coming. Now, the Lord is not going to flood the earth with water. There's a rainbow to prove that He's not bringing water down on us to flood the whole world again. But He did say He'd hit this earth with fire. And He also promises to wipe out every form of evil. And every time the serpent raises his head, and every time there is a dishonest scale, weight, measurement, or scale, the Bible says God abhors dishonest weights and scales. And if there was ever a dishonest weight in our land today, it's the U.S. dollar, which tells me biblically that God stands against the dollar. So as a believer, I can't stand for it if God stands against it. Well, why is it so dishonest? Because it's made out of hot air, and the salesmen are telling me it's worth something. They're lying to me. While they print trillions and buy farms, businesses, islands, nations, and politicians. They're buying, and the reason they're buying these things with all these trillions freshly printed is because people believe it's worth something. My dream tells me there's coming a day, the announcement will come, and they will realize the U.S. dollar is worthless. And when that happens, they will have lost everything based in dollars, and they're going to head west. They're going to be running west. Here's our St. Louis adjusted monetary base. I just pulled this off the internet. Look at the line heading straight up in the air. In 2009, this is just an actual shot that tells you from the Federal Reserve, this is what they did actually with the printing presses. That from 1920 all the way to 2009, we printed up to a certain amount, 800 billion in actual cash that's used, and all of a sudden they doubled, well actually they tripled the money supply within a couple of years. So it took us 100 years to get where we're at, and then they tripled it in 2 years. Why'd they do that? Because it's dying. And the only way that you can float this dying economy is to print. Each time Congress comes up and we start fighting over the dollar or the ceiling, the debt ceiling. Remember the debt ceiling? How many of those we had over the last years? And they fight and scream and scrape and scratch, and then they do what they have to do. They raise it. Because it's the only way. If they stop printing money, the economy crashes. If they keep printing money, the dollar crashes, and then the economy crashes. So which do you want? You know, so both ways are going to bring a crash. Why? Because that's the way the system was built by Pharaoh's magicians. It was built to crash, to fleece the sheeple. We are not sheeple. We're sheep of his pasture, and I'm not interested in being a sheep of their pasture. I'm not under that domination. Amen. To them, I'm a king and a priest. I'll just leave it at that. There was the $16 trillion QE1 Fed audit that was placed, and we found out that Ben Bernanke was throwing money out of the helicopters as he promised he would. God stands opposed to the U.S. dollar. There's Proverbs 20:10, as I had mentioned. Diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are like abomination to the Lord. He cannot stand with this dollar because this dollar is opposed to his people, and it's opposed to truth. Massive risk. Everything denominated in dollars is at risk. Everything. Anything fiat or stated wealth is at risk. Anything requiring payback in dollars is at risk. Anything in dollars. Well, I've got this many dollars in my retirement account. That's an extreme risk if it's in dollars. If it's in gold or silver, you're safe. God likes gold and silver, by the way. He said it's all his. So if you want to get into God's economy, that'd probably be a pretty safe way to lock in on what God likes. All right? So, by the way, I teach this in finance classes. Round 2 of the crisis is coming. Anyone ever been through a hurricane? If you've ever seen one, the front side is pretty vicious when it comes through, and then you get into the eye, and everyone gets happy. Well, we've been in the eye of the hurricane, and people are so happy to see some sunshine, they're actually taking the paneling off their windows. They don't realize the second half the hurricane's coming, but the winds will come from a different direction this next time, and they will be more damaging than the first side. So as you can see in the picture, the 2008 crisis was the front of the hurricane, and now we are here in the eye preparing to enter the second half, which will be very, very disastrous. And as you can see, our U.S. debt is the largest in world history, $200 trillion in promises. I mean, we can't, the mathematical science, my understanding is this, that at $12.2 trillion in debt, our nation had to make a decision. If you step over the line of 12.2, you are bankrupt and you will never pay it off. If you will back up and stop overspending at 12.2, there is a way that you can get out of debt. But our nation boldly stepped over 12.2. and crossed right over. We're now at 16 point something, on our way to 20, and then 25, and then 30, and 50, and 100, and 200, and as far as we go until the thing finally breaks, or until God says enough. And it's designed that way. Now, where does the debt go? The debt comes on the backs of we the people, just like Pharaoh did to the Israelites when he enslaved them for 400 years. The spirit of Pharaoh, through the world bankers today, and Agenda 21, and all of that wrapped together to communize, first is to seize your property and enslave you and your children with so much debt that you'll never be able to get out in 400 years. That gives them plenty of time to seize the world and do all that they want to do. Here's, now, of course, we don't have to play that game, and we have a great big God. that isn't going to let the serpent take over his planet. While lots of people think, well, what kind of what's our time frames here? Do we get out of here early? Do we get out of here in the middle? Or do we get out of here at the end? Or don't we get out of here? No one knows for sure. Everyone has their ideas, but the good news is this: don't focus on the micro 3.5 or 7 year period. Look at the big macro picture. God doesn't let the enemy own his planet. Amen. He's not going to let him do it. And historically, God's always knocked out Pharaoh. He's always knocked out the Babylonians. He's always knocked out the enemies, always. And he will continue to do the same thing he always has. You can trust him with that. Okay, so what do we prefer? Hard assets. We've got a little thing here. It says gold and silver, precious stones, food, clothing, multiplying and producing businesses, farmlands. That's an asset. Properties. For the first time in our lifetimes, it is more profitable for you to invest in food than to leave your dollars in a savings account.
Well, I'm going to interrupt right there, but I highly recommend you get this set of 11 DVDs. The place where you get the information from the Prophecy Club is not at our website or on our radio program. It is by getting our DVDs. So if you want our best information, I recommend you get this October Prophecy Conference, 6 speakers, 11 DVDs, valued at $300, once offered for $200. Now you can get it for a gift of just $90 or more. If you get it before May 9th, there's free shipping. Call 785-266-1112. That's 785-266-1112. Or go to prophecyclub.com. prophecyclub.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers. And thank you for your gifts of support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. You must get these 2 DVDs. Outside of the birth of Christ, I think this is the most important information since the flood. Prophet Ephraim Rodriguez was shown in a vision that a large meteor will hit near Puerto Rico and cause a 1,000-foot tsunami there, but it'll be 200 to 400 feet high and go 100 miles inland on the east coast of America. It will also split America from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, and large chunks of California will fall into the ocean, killing millions of Americans. In a second DVD, I put the whole picture together, quoting 6 other people that also saw a large meteor hit Puerto Rico, 4 for the tsunami hitting the east coast of the United States, 6 the split of America in 2 pieces, 3 large chunks of California falling into the ocean, 3 also saw the reason for this is because America forces Israel to split her land. Get both DVDs valued at $60 for a gift of $30. It's good for the ministry, but you have to have this information. Call 785-266-1112 or go to prophecyclub.com. Get the meteor offer today. Get it today. As prophecy students, we know an emergency is heading our way, and the average person can go over 30 days without food, but no more than 3 days without clean water. In the event of an emergency, you must have clean water almost immediately. One of the primary causes of death in emergencies is not lack of food, but rather drinking contaminated water. You can run water from a mud puddle through a Berkey and drink it. You can have clean water when others are getting sick from drinking bug-infested water. Your filter must work without pressurized water or electricity, which is why the missionaries choose Berkey. You can get a Go Berkey for $139, but I recommend you get the Royal Berkey with 4 filters for $364. I personally use the Crown with 8 filters for all my daily water needs. A Royal Berkey looks like a large stainless steel coffee pot, 9 inches wide by 20 inches tall, with 4 black filters. It processes over a gallon an hour for a gift of $364. Call 785-266-1112. Ask for the Royal Berkey, 785-266-1112, or the Crown Berkey with 8 filters. Or see the entire line of Berkeys by going to prophecyclub.com.